causes inflation is the supply chain problems, right?
Right.
Like the whole idea is like, oh, well, if demand goes up, then supply can just catch up. And right now we're having a lot of issues with the supply chain, a lot of it China related because of the COVID lockdowns and things like that.
Which on that topic, like this goes back to what we talked about last week in the podcast with Ian Easton, just how China has so much control over the supply chain, from the Chinese military tied companies controlling the cranes in U.S. ports. They really have a devastating chokehold on the American economy because of their power over the supply chain, which will get worse if the Chinese military, in their non-military action, controls the South China Sea, Taiwan, Pacific, all the shipping lanes.
And there's essentially no part of the supply chain that is not controlled by some foreign entity. So, like, for example, we're reliant on Canada for some of our oil, right? And like, that's not so bad because we have a very good relationship with Canada in general. But still, like, you got to consider that even our allies can be heavily influenced by China. And so, like, I'm not opposed to doing trade with other countries. It's just that oil is a major part of basically every supply chain, right? Because even though the U.S. produces a lot of oil, we still, because of the way the refineries are set up and so on, like, we're still importing a lot of oil. And so oil for transporting things from one site to another is part of the supply chain, and that can get screwed up. And then China can influence a country that's part of that supply chain, right? And so you've got this like very complex interconnected system. And like, unless we start to rein that in and become more self-sufficient, I don't think we need to totally be self-sufficient, but at least on core things, like we got to be self-sufficient. Otherwise, China's zero COVID lockdowns are going to continue to screw with our supply chains now. And the next thing they do 5-10 years from now is going to screw with us again.
It's not just the supply chains, like, we are delayed in getting some stuff from China, but they will weaponize that. Remember the whole Made in China 2025 thing?
Mm-hmm.
And they were going to go for high-tech stuff and for microchips and things like that. And there was a big backlash, and they were like, oh, they canceled. Like, they basically...
they didn't cancel it.
They unbranded it.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, they stopped talking about Made in China 2025, but they pushed forward even faster with those initiatives. So basically, they're trying to catch up in the tech world so they can have a monopoly over that.
And they've made real progress from that. I mean, I think Huawei's involvement in 5G globally is a part of that, and it may not be branded that way, but it is, right? You've got Chinese companies involved in the telecom network and the internet networks all over the world, especially in these developing countries that didn't really have alternatives. And so, like, this is part of Made in China 2025. They've got their computer chips all over.
Well, and I mean, they're not that good at computer chips yet.
I know, but like, it's not 2025 yet. I think,
and they've got 3 more years.
They've got 3 more years. Yeah. And then, if they take Taiwan, and they control those computer chips. And I'm not sure they'd succeed in taking Taiwan, which is a whole separate issue. But like, they make really rapid progress. And like, it's sometimes shocking to just look back and be like, wow, things were so different just like 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, the Chinese Communist Party is basically willing to throw money and resources. Like, when it decides it wants something, right? Like, then everything pivots to fulfill that. So in some ways, they'll get companies that are actually good, and then they'll get a bunch of terrible companies that never actually produce good quality anything, and it's a waste of money. But they can still, they'll tolerate that, so they can get like the 1 or 2 companies that become Tencent, right? Or become these giant,
Right.
become TikTok. They'll take all of that so that they can get those ones that are going to become Huawei or whatever.
Which, might sound appealing to some people, the idea that like, oh, the state can decide to do this, and like something will get done. But like, everyone keep in mind, like the Chinese economy runs on debt. It's just one giant debt bubble that's going to burst at some point versus like a free market where people are incentivized to create companies that function.
I mean, the Chinese Communist Party would not be able to do things this way if we were not giving them money.
Yes.
If we had not been giving them money since the 90s, essentially. We've been funding their rise. And yeah, it is terrible.
And this is like something I think a lot of people in the West get wrong. Like they see this system and are like, oh, that's great. Well, we in America are like, bickering back and forth and can't get anything done. China can just,
But of course, they steal a lot of that technology. So I'm saying those one or two companies are not like necessarily the most innovative. It's found a way to bribe some employee.
They're the most ruthless and the most loyal to the party.
There was somebody who found a way to bribe some employee from the TSMC and then like stole their chip data or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily that like it's actually, or even the high-speed rail, right?
Mm-hmm.
They stole that from Japan largely.
So it's not that they're the most innovative or anything. It's just that they can get the tech.